So I'm just watching a flipbook of our simulation here. So it looks great. You know, it's bending, holding its shape, not too jittery. It can be problematic with bullets, you know, things kind of jittering and vibrating, but it seems okay. And I really like the way these are kind of, these parts are kind of snapping apart and flopping around after they break, and then kind of relaxing. And then after, you know, after that initial 50 frames, we're still getting a bit of movement, kind of dropping and sagging, which looks great. It kind of, you know, feels like metal under tension. So that's great. So let me just come back out here. Let's just drop a couple of nulls to grab this information for later. So call this out geo, and then out points here. Right, so if you take a look here, make sure you got load from disk checked there. We've just got the point geometry, and you notice that this plays really quick, and this will play pretty quick as well. And that's because you know, we saved this rest geometry. So basically inside here, I believe somewhere, yeah, there'll be this transform pieces, which is actually, you know, where we're just using these points to move this geometry. Okay, so it's much more efficient doing it this way. You know, we don't have a lot of pieces, but you know, if you had a very heavy sim, then doing it this way with the geometry and the points can save a lot of time when you're playing it back, right? Great. Let me just delete that null there. And I come back out here, go back to the first frame, and let's go back here, and I want to take a look, delete that null, and take a look at the wood next. So we're going to be fracturing the wood with the RBD material fracture. All right, so first of all, let's get rid of all those groups, group deletes that we have on here. Remember, we have all these weird groups that we don't need. Group delete, there we go. Okay, and just put a star in there that will delete everything. And I'm going to make a group, whoops, call it wood. Okay, there we go. And let's drop our RBD material fracture. So before, because this node can be a bit slow depending on what it's doing, before I connect it up, we'll set it to its defaults of wood. And well, I'm not going to turn that on yet. Let me just plug it in, turn it on, and see what we get. There we go. So we're getting a fracture, which looks okay. It's not too much of a problem here in our case, but so with wood, obviously you want the kind of spikes following the length of your, you know, you think about the grain of the wood will be in this direction, right? And you want the spikes in this direction. You don't want them going like that. So if you had pieces going in this direction, and say if you're doing like a building and you're doing the kind of bits of wood in a building, you'll have pieces going in all directions, and you know, you want the spikes to be dependent on the length of your piece. So to make sure that that works correctly, you'd need to turn on fracture per piece, leave it on name. You see a little change there. In our case, it doesn't change too much because they're all pointing in the same direction. So you've got, we can actually visualize, you can see what the grain's doing if I turn that on. So this is all based on a Boolean, right? So it's cutting in this direction like that. Okay. I might just give myself a bit more detail there. So drop that to 0.025. Right, so I'm just going to leave that as default for the rest of it. So the cut, we could take a look at that. So the cut is cutting in this direction. Okay, and one thing I'm going to do here is put the splinters. So basically we've got these cuts cutting in this direction, but if you notice there's not an actual cut there. We've got these splinters which are kind of being placed onto these cuts to give us the spikes, right? I think we can visualize it like that. There we go. So we get these long, big, spiky spikes. I don't know how else to describe them, but I'd like to have a lot more, so to have it a lot more dense, right? So I'm going to push that to 50. You'll see that gives us much more sharper, spikier geometry. Okay, and then in detail we want to use convex decomposition. So these pieces will be concaved, right? And if I use an ABD, what's it called, exploded view that we used earlier, connect that up there, visualize that. So there, with this now already, you can see this white outline is the proxy geometry. If I turn that off, so that's what's coming out here on the right. Just had a crash there, so I've just opened that up again. Yeah, so I'm looking at the proxy geometry here. So this is actually what we will be simulating in Bullet. I can just drop an exploded view on that by itself, right? So this is what we'll send into Bullet. And remember, so all of these pieces will have the same name attributes. However, they are separate. If we go to 9 and then 3D connectivity, you can see we've got this is built of convex pieces, right? So each of these pieces is a convex shape, which Bullet likes. So we can wrap a shape, a collision geometry around each of these, but when they all have the same name, they'll be kind of simulated together as one piece, right? And then we can see that there. And then the transform detail from that will be applied to these pieces. Okay, so you can see it's pretty good, pretty close, but we can push it a bit further. I'm going to come back into my detail here and push this max concavity to 0.1. That'll take a bit of time to calculate. There we go, that's done. It didn't take too long actually, but you can see it gives us a much better representation of our geometry. Okay, just delete them, we don't need them now. Cool. Let's see what else. Cluster. So by default the cluster is turned on. You need to be careful with this because it's something it's easy to forget that it's turned on, and then when you're simulating you have way less detail than you're expecting, right? So if I turn on the visualizer there, you can see that all of this, which is one color, will be one piece. All of the green here will be one piece, so we'll have way less detail. So I'm just going to turn it off completely, because I want the wood to be able to break wherever it needs to. I don't want it to be forced. Okay, and then here we have the constraints. We've got two different types. So we've got the grain, so where we cut the grain, there are constraints generated there, and then the cut as well. And we're going to want to switch to soft constraints after. Okay, and I'll leave them as they are. We can turn on some colors for them as well. So if we come back here, I think if I show constraints, there we go, we can see how the constraints are set up for us there as well. So that's great. So just like with the metal, I want to convert these constraints into surface constraints. So here it is. ABD convert constraints, put that in there. I'm just going to get rid of this exploded view because we don't need it. And again, that's changed to surface points. There we go. So you see we get a lot more. Excuse me. And I'm going to drop a couple of groups because we've got different groups for the wood. We got the grain and the other one, the cuts as well. So I'm just going to do one group for all of the constraints called wood, and then I would drop another one underneath this one. Okay, because I want to select a few. Let me just give myself some space here. Whoops, making a mess. Give myself some space. This needs to go in there and that's in there. There we go. So I want to make a selection of a few of the points in the middle, sorry, a few of the primitives in the middle, excuse me, to to make weaker constraints there, right? So I'm just going to drop in my values for the size and the position of this. Okay, so that's going to select these in the middle, and let me do include partially. Oops. I'm going to call this weak wood, just like that. Okay, so these I'm gonna, within the solver, I'm gonna break these at a certain point. Okay, so that will allow the wood to kind of split into, well, each plank to split into, and this will make sure that, so if we have, you know, the primitives can be quite long, so if the only half of the primitive is inside the box, then it's still in the group, right? It's difficult to see here. I think if I do that, because of the colors there, if I just turn off the colors, there we go, so we can see what's included there. Okay, I'll put those colors back on, and that's pretty much ready. And just like before, just drop an RBD pack, just to be neat and tidy. Drop a null underneath, and call this out, surprise, surprise, wood. Good. One more quick thing before we finish with this is, if I go here and just drop a null, and we take a look at the attributes, you can see we don't have anything on the points, but we just got this name, this section that we set up earlier. But I like to have the name on both. If you remember, we did the same with the metal. I think here, yeah, I promoted the attribute. So actually I can just copy this and drop it here, and also remember to do it on the proxy geometry as well. And I can delete all of these. Okay, and remember, important to not delete the original. So we've got the name there and on the points as well, on both the proxy and the render geometry.